Okay, so welcome to the Tearsheet Podcast. We're doing a special edition here in Orlando on site at the FIS Emerald 2025 conference. Today, we're going to be talking about modernizing money movement, what's next for payments. I'm joined by Elaine Duff of FIS, SVP and Head of Money Movement. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Nick Devaris, Global Account Manager at AWS. Welcome, Nick.
Why, thank you.
And with the money movement landscape evolving rapidly, many banks need to take action now to be prepared for what's coming next. In this episode, we'll break down the complex web of regulatory updates and changing ISO standards and unpack how banks of varying scales are approaching modernizing their money movement capabilities, whether that's smaller institutions focusing on capturing the most immediate impact, or in a moment where customers demand top-tier digital experiences, we'll explore how payment solutions can enhance digital efficiency and ensure fraud protection. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Let's start with just jumping in and introducing yourself, Elaine.
Sure. So hi, Elaine Duff. I work here at FIS. I've been here for about 7.5 years. I lead our money movement business. So really focused on helping financial institutions evolve, modernize their payment journey, and look at FIS for both a software and a services delivery partner.
Awesome. Welcome to the show.
And I am Nick Devaris. I'm a Global Account Manager with Amazon Web Services. And I spend most of my time helping customers modernize their business applications and move to the cloud.
Awesome. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you.
Let's just jump in. What are the most significant regulatory updates impacting money movement today, and why do they matter now?
Sure. So regulatory agenda for money movement is probably one of the most aggressive we have. It's across the globe. We're seeing the ISO message formats be really intended to help firms standardize their messaging, become more efficient, make their operations much more standardized. However, it is really large changes for the entire payment ecosystem. It's not just your rails and connectivity to, say, Fedwire. It's also your fraud tools, your digital channels, and other BIC reporting formats and so forth. So we're trying to make sure that the regulators understand the pace of change, whether it's the ISO shift for Fedwire, we have SWIFT in November. I mean, just this year alone, it's a radical amount of change for the banks to manage, and we view our role to helping guide those institutions, but also let the regulators know just what is a level of change that people can sort of absorb into their ecosystem.
And from a technology standpoint, at Amazon, we're helping customers build patterns globally to address those regulatory standards. Those standards differ in different geographies, so we have patterns to migrate applications and modernize applications to help customers not have to worry so much about all of the regulatory constraints that are involved in migrating applications. We work directly with a lot of the regulators to make sure that those standards are built into the platform. So when customers migrate, we can help migrate quickly and hopefully do it at a lower cost.
Elaine, you were saying, I mean, obviously this is a multivariable calculus, lots of different regulation on the ground in the US, but then you're dealing with regulatory change globally. I'm kind of curious if you can judge where we are in that cycle, the readiness for at the institutional level to be able to address this.
Yeah, and what's interesting is a lot of the regulators are starting to send surveys out. So the surveys come to the software providers to ask us where we may be servicing 250 institutions to help support them for the change. But they're also going out to the end customers, whether it's some of the largest financial institutions or small credit unions, and say, what's your level of support? I think across the board, we're seeing the institutions be relatively honest to say the level of change is manageable, but what we've seen is different regulators taking positions of being a coexistence where you can start sending messages in the new format but still rely on the old. Other regulators have taken a big bang approach, and that has been harder to imagine that on Monday things are going to look drastically different and manage that. So that's probably been the biggest readiness hurdle most people have felt, is the different approaches the regulators are taking today.
And has that resulted in an urgency? What's the level of urgency at the institutional level?
Pretty high, I would say. Every institution's a little bit different in the way that they organize regulatory adoption. So for some cases, it's an operations team that have a full day job that need to take it on. In other cases, they may have a team that focuses on change agenda and transformation. And we find that support of a change agenda division to really help that institution think about it holistically.
I think from an urgency standpoint, what we're seeing or hearing from customers is there's customer expectations as well, right? Customers
Their
today,
end customers.
yes, their end customers. They're expecting 24/7 instant, customer-friendly, typically mobile applications that are connected to online systems. Also, the younger generation, they didn't grow up with monolithic applications. They're used to doing everything on their phone, right? So that's driving a lot. Also, competitive pressures, right? Traditional banks that don't modernize and there's no urgency around it, they could face serious competitive pressures. And then finally, what we're seeing is a real push towards cost reduction and automation, right? There's a piece of that that helps drive time to market. So I think there's, those three for us we're seeing as large pieces around the urgency of why customers are going to modernize.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the things we've heard here throughout our conversations the past couple of days is that very few institutions are ready nowadays to do this rip and replace in terms of their own modernization. So they're taking it piecemeal. One of the things I want to ask you guys, like, what does a modular approach to payments modernization look like in reality and practice?
Yeah, so I'll take that first, Nick.
Yep.
I think what we're trying to do is talk to clients about the value of a payment hub. So not just having single rail software solutions, and think of the value proposition today, but understand whether it's a 2-year, a 3-year, a 5-year process to think about their wires, their ACH and instant payments. They can do one at a time, and we can be helpful in doing that. One of the ways that we've actually been able to do it is by putting one of our offerings, the Money Movement Hub, into the cloud. Nick's team, from an AWS perspective, has allowed that modular delivery approach, which makes it much simpler for the bank to think about this on a phase-by-phase, year-by-year approach.
Right. And if you look at, and we've seen this across a lot of industries, this layered approach, right? Peeling functionality off of mainframe systems, for example, to take the functionality that drives the most value for the customer, and maybe that modernizing that first, and then taking a look at maybe the middle layer and the data layer later, right? And this allows for a few things: adding functionality quickly, improving the customer experience, which of course drives adoption. We also see it, we're seeing a lot around data consolidation now, so maybe leaving that till later because maybe data serves many different applications. So providing the availability or the ability for customers to modernize at their pace and peel functionality off as they see fit, also from a time to market, right? If there's new features or functionality that's required, they can deliver that right away, which will drive adoption while they're going and looking at the rest of the application or product to modernize.
In my conversation with Firdas, the CTO, yesterday, one of the things we talked about was just double clicking on this conversation right now. Was to be a CTO at a large organization, undergo a big rip and replace thing, like you're sticking your neck out for a big project that may or may not go your way, and you may not be around either to enjoy the success, or you might have to leave because it was hard. So one of the things he talked about was like by doing in this modular approach was you're able to, like you said, find the use cases that make the most sense, have the most impact, and be able to demonstrate the ROI on that before you move into other things. Like, are you seeing that with your clients as well?
Absolutely. From our standpoint, so the landscape is littered with big projects that were never finished, right? So it's really a risk and reward, right? So it may be that pieces of the monolithic application never get moved. Maybe they'll be wound down. There are insurance use cases where maybe their business has changed and they'll just let it run forever, and then once the customers are no longer there, they'll change it, right? But we're seeing it that use case is really around managing risk and improving time to market. So we do see that a lot.
I think the urgency around time to market is really important. So there might be a use case where there's a lot of operational risk, or there's a large operations team and the client is really clear on this is what's most important to me, and where we can work on providing that ROI to say, okay, the team of 10 is now a team of 5, or you used to have this many errors. Now all of a sudden the SDP rate has gone up by 10%.
Sure.
Those are the real quantifiable outcomes that clients are looking for us to be able to prove out.
It makes a lot of sense. One of the things we talk about a lot in our coverage at Tearsheet is the impact that modernization has on user experiences, customer experiences. And a lot of times if there's antiquated back office stuff, you can put a shiny new front end on it, but you're still going to be dealing with a lot of the same siloization. And so I'm kind of curious from your guys' perspective, like how does modernization money movement tie into improving digital experiences for consumers?
Well, sure. So we see this a lot, and typically in some of the smaller banks and institutions where we see the modernization of the money movement process improving the customer experience. I mean, we've all been there, right? I've got a child in college, right? I'm walking into a meeting and I need $300. I need it right now. Right, it can never be tomorrow, and it's never $300 either, by the way. But that ability to have a front end where I can use multiple rails, where I can do it on my phone, where I can use the technology and not have to worry about. I think there's a big value there, and I think that's where we're starting to see a lot of the value immediately, right? And to the end user, that's a big deal to go one place and be able to do multiple things.
Yeah, I think instant payments is a game changer. So very optional in the U.S. today. Clients are, banks, we're seeing financial institutions do sort of a receive. There's, from a send perspective. But when the end consumer can send money and not know that it's 3 or 4 days before it's going to be available in the other person's account and it's instantaneous, that is a real-time beneficiary that they see right away. So.
We saw that in Elaine's demo on Monday on the stage, where throughout the process, as the money was being transferred, I think for Disney tickets,
Yep.
we saw the confirmation come back. That's a big deal. People want it. I don't know, maybe it's just nice seeing it, but when you're moving money and when you're transferring money, it's really nice to see that notification come back to say, okay, that piece of the process is done. This is bad. So I think that's important. I think that's a big part of the modernization effort and driving that customer adoption.
Yeah, it's sent, it's complete, it's never pending, right?
Right.
Totally game changer. Yeah. One of the things we've heard from most of the guests over the past couple of days is the ramp up in fraud and almost like the weaponization of the new tools that banks and technology firms are used by fraudsters. And obviously there's a trade-off between usability sometimes and keeping the bad guys out. So I'm kind of curious from your perspectives, like how fraud risk and what role payment solutions can play in helping banks manage fraud more proactively.
Right. Well, from the technology standpoint, there's that real-time transaction monitoring, right? Being able to look for unusual or suspicious activity. Also, there are things like multi-factor authentication, right? I think we've seen that a lot, in our mobile devices, but now we're beginning to see that in applications that are delivered, and I think that's important. And finally, and we don't hear as much about it, but it's something that we're seeing a lot of is dark web monitoring, looking for trends that might hit us later, right? And being aware of them. We call that seeing around corners, trying to look around corners. We might not see it today, but if it's out there, it's good to know about it so we can be ready and proactive to look for it.
I think also one of the things Nick and I sat down and talked about our Money Movement Hub launch and fraud. Most people were offering instant payments without thinking about fraud as an embedded solution. I think the uniqueness of putting our solution in the AWS cloud, we were able to bring in fraud solutions to be in line. In line means you're doing the fraud check at time of transaction within the 5-second window of TCH. So having the ability to say it's all going to be hosted in the AWS environment, the fraud tooling and fraud screening will be done at time of transaction is a pretty strong value proposition. The other piece and sort of the solution that you need to have is for financial institutions that have a enterprise-wide fraud tool, they still also want to make sure that every transaction's hitting that fraud tool that might be across the bank. So we're trying to make sure that we're kind of meeting both objectives. Instant payments being a brand new game changer when it comes to fraud, faster payments, faster fraud, but then also ensuring that their enterprise solution, whether it's hosted by FIS or another institution, can also absorb some of those instant payments on a post-trade basis.
Just to ask more about this, is there an educational gap that you're finding with your clients, both your clients, in terms of their readiness and understanding like what needs to happen next to keep pace with the cyber threats?
I think so. I mean, one of our unique perspectives is because we've seen instant payments happen in Asia, in Europe, we're coming with a lot of knowledge of where things have easily just sort of quickly skyrocketed in terms of fraud. So we were very intentional to say the fraud solution is going to be bundled in part of the offering as a way that you can remove it if needed, but our high recommendation is that this should be there from the start.
Right.
But I think for everyone, it's, well, I'm only going to do a few transactions, so I don't need it. And then all of a sudden, the demand from the consumers go up, and all of a sudden they're hitting more critical volume and need to be thinking about it.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Yep.
I want to ask you guys personal questions, like we're about halfway through the year, personal, professional questions. Won't get too personal, not yet. But what are your big audacious goals for the rest of 2025, you and your teams?
Yeah, so our really large focus has been on launching the Money Movement Hub, making sure that the capacity of our teams to be able to bring lots of clients on board, migrate clients from other solutions, and really ensure that clients know where they want to be on their modernization journey and helping them make those decisions in this calendar year. So feels like I can't believe it's May already. I think people call it Maycember, and that's like a really good term with everything going on and being here at our client conference. But I think trying to make sure that the rest of the year is really about clients knowing where they are in their journey and where we can help.
Right. It's interesting. I'm sitting here today. A year ago, we were here talking about Money Movement Hub, and we were talking about the goals and where we might be in a year, and I thought, my gosh, there's a lot of work to do. But we've gone even further than I think many of us may have seen, and I think it's exciting. So goals for us are obviously to support the money movement hub and to make sure it's successful, and also the customers that are onboarding, right? The customers that are, FIS customers are also AWS customers, right? So it's important to make sure that we're all together, that this is successful, and that we make sure that we cover everything. Fraud, we've talked about it, it's a big deal. And as we've seen modernization increase, we're also seeing, unfortunately, the bad actors increase activity. So goals for the year are around making sure that we're supporting the money movement process as well as all the applications around it and making sure that customers are successful. I think broader, we're seeing a lot of movement and a lot of activity around looking at other monolithic or mainframe systems, for example, COBOL code, modernizing that to Java applications so it can be used across the board. We're seeing it. You mentioned silos earlier. We're going through a lot of taking a look at silos. How can we get the data in those silos and really begin to monetize it, right? So it can be used throughout the applications for driving customer value.
We've ended our conversations the past couple of days with a very important question I'm going to put to you guys as well.
Uh-oh.
It is. We're here in the land of entertainment. Who's your favorite Disney character and why?
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I would have to say Ratatouille.
Okay.
I think it's so ingenuous to see Paris, but from the back office cook perspective, and the way that he's able to literally take an individual and turn him into one of the master chefs at a restaurant. So it's the
very
technology and
technology,
dimension view of it.
I like that.
It was cool.
I'm not that. I'm a traditionalist. I'm a big Mickey Mouse fan, and I'll tell you. So I have come to my family, even since I was very little, and there are things about Disney World, about Florida and Disneyland for that matter. Like, for example, out my window last night, I could see the fireworks, and they're doing fireworks with the ears. That's cool, right? But to me, everything is Mickey Mouse. You walk in your hotel room, and the towels are folded to look like. I'm a big Mickey Mouse fan. So also my kids and I watch the older black and white ones. They just bring back memories. So anyway, I've always been a Mickey Mouse fan.
So it's like modernizing a traditional view.
Maybe, yeah, you could. I like it.
Brand, right?
Very strong.
Right.
We were at dinner last night, and the number of adults at a relatively high-end restaurant, they were all wearing fancy ears as part of their dinner outfit. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Elaine, Nick, I want to thank you both for joining me today and joining us here on the Tear Sheet Podcast. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Let's end with a little hands in the middle here.
Sure.
And we do